We're continuing on, this time taking a talk from Jonathan Blow about software engineering being in decline. It was a clip that someone pulled together that went viral, also from a talk that went viral ish about the collapse of civilization as we know it. It's a very dramatic title around just noticing that as hardware gets quicker and quicker, software doesn't quite keep up or sometimes takes advantage of how easy it is to just ship gigabytes of code and expect it to run. And this presents the problem statement around all of the stuff that you'll notice in your day to day around software not feeling as stable as it should be. And I can sort of summarize the parts at the end of this around some solutions that he's thought of, which are very, very broad and don't paint a clear picture. But it's interesting to talk about for sure.
It's loading.
It is lonely. It is loading.
We put it everywhere. All our communication systems are software. Our vehicles are software.
I'm going to restart the video. I did not turn on.
And my thesis for the rest of this talk is that software is actually in decline right now. It's in maybe a soft decline that just makes things really inconvenient for us, but it could lead to a hard decline later on because our civilization depends on software. We put it everywhere. All our communication systems are software. Our vehicles are software. So, we now have airplanes that kill hundreds of people due to bad software, and bad software only, right? There was no other problem with those airplanes. Now, I don't think most people would believe me if I say software is in decline. It sure seems like it's flourishing, so I have to convince you at least that this is a plausible perspective, and that's my goal for the rest of this talk. And what I will say about that is, these collapses like we're talking about, that Bronze Age collapse was massive. Like, all these civilizations were destroyed, but it took 100 years. So if you're at the beginning of that collapse in the first 20 years, you might think, well, things aren't as good as they were 20 years ago, but it's fine, we're basically the same, right? But then you keep thinking that, every 20 years another couple cities get burned to the ground, and then eventually there's like nothing, right? Fall of the Roman Empire was about 300 years. So if you're in the middle of a very slow collapse like that, would you recognize it? Would you know what it looked like from the inside? So of course I expect the reply to what I'm saying to be, you're crazy, software is doing great. Look at all these internet companies that are making all this money and changing the way that we live. And I would say, yes, that is all happening. But what is really happening is that software has been free riding on hardware. For the past many decades, we've had amazing advances in hardware technology. Computers keep getting faster and faster. It's really one of the greatest accomplishments in human history that we've somehow managed to do that. And software gets better, in air quotes, because it has better hardware to run on. That's the main reason. Software technology itself has not improved in quite a while, I claim, right? And you can say, but look at all these examples of cool stuff we can do, even in the past couple of years. So like AlphaGo was an AI that'll beat human players at Go. And you can go on like Instagram or whatever app and like make your face look like somebody else's face. That's crazy. We didn't used to be able to do that. And that's true. But most of these, again, are products of hardware being fast. Most of these cool things that we do now are due to machine learning algorithms. And it's, those really are relying on quantity of computation right now to produce impressive results. It's hard to imagine being able to train AlphaGo 20 years ago on the computers we had at that time, right? So it's not there are software technology improvements here. Right? Machine learning algorithms have legitimately gotten better, but there's two things to say about that. Well, the main thing to say about it, I will say, is just that it's a minority of actual software technology, right? So of the volume of things that we run, the thing that runs the machine learning algorithm that produces the actual impressive result is a very small piece of the program. It's actually really simple once you understand the math, and especially if you don't have to train it, if you just have to use it, right? And so when you take an app on your phone like that does something funny with your picture, the part of it that does the thing that we think is cool and really value, that piece of software is tremendously simple compared to all the stuff about like loading the bitmap for your face or responding to user input events, right? That part of the software is huge and complicated and is the part that's kind of falling apart. So I would characterize software as having small local technological improvements like machine learning with overall inertia or degradation in the rest of the field. And we're very impressed by the improvements though, right? And let me illustrate the degradation part as best I can. And it's to say that we simply don't expect software to work anymore. And I'm not sure when this happened. Computers always had a reputation for being a little bit funny, but if you go back many decades ago, it was generally due to like not being user-friendly or hard to understand how to use it. But today, if you're using a program and it does something wrong, you're just like, yeah, it's software, restart it, whatever. And that didn't used to be. And if our standards are shrinking over time, how low can they shrink before it becomes unsustainable? So I decided to say, I want to quantify or illustrate how much I put up with this from day to day. So from now on, I'm just going to take a screenshot every time any piece of software that I use has an obvious bug or unintuitive or incorrect piece of behavior. And right when I decided that, I was working on my compiler in the command line, and the console that I use, after a while, just starts saying attempt to index a nil value in the prompt because it's written in Lua for some reason. Then I go to Emacs, and I'm working on my code, and Emacs is set to reload files that have been modified, and that used to work fine, but at some point they broke it so that it reloads the file too early and doesn't get the whole thing, and half of it is cut off, and I have to manually reset that every time it happens. Then I go to Gmail, and I'm going to send an email to the rest of the team.
I actually do have a small comment on error states there, because I do agree that error states in general feel very inconsistent depending on what you're using. And I feel like it's the pluggability problem, where at least in Astro, we have to support every major framework, and we're just a wrapper layer on top of Solid or MDX or React. And we at Astro have a really nice Astro error suite where we document every error code. We have reusable files, and they all spill over to the docs that we publish online. But if an error happens somewhere down the chain, like in Vite or MDX or React, the error message looks completely different. It's esoteric. The formatting is completely off. And if you go deeper and deeper down the NPM package chain, it's just going to get more obvious. And he's trying to make a contrast between software of the 90s and the 2000s, where there just weren't the same, there wasn't the same level of package ecosystem. So you could be really consistent with your errors and know, from the top, here are the 20 errors in the universe, and I will expand them to be very readable for every touch point in the app. And these days, in order to do that, it is almost impossible, but you can at least make the first class errors really nice. It's just a struggle with debugging.
No comment about that. I'm sorry for everyone who has to deal with this because you'll never finish. I do. Okay. One of my startup ideas that I never did because it is a dream startup, which is essentially the universal error code recognizer. You know how React has error codes that serialize in production?
Yes. Yes, I do.
React,
It's really
yeah, React
odd.
has an error code minifier thing. Usually, it doesn't actually give you any useful information whatsoever.
Right.
But if you're experienced enough in both React and the code base that you're working in, once you see an error, you're like, oh, I know what happened here, and then you kind of go fix it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, Part of me wants to basically just establish a universal error code recognizer and debugger thing for every package in JavaScript, every package in the world. And so when you let
Uh,
error codes filter through different layers, right, which is what you're experiencing, you have to transparently reflect some layer beneath you, and then
yes.
the layer above you has to reflect your errors. And no one knows what errors are happening. People swallow error stacks all the time, and it's just really really annoying to see an error that doesn't exist in your code base because you didn't write it. Someone threw an error, and then you just kind of report that error, and there's just no way to understand this. So basically, I was like, what would it take for me to just paste an error into somewhere and then get some useful advice on how to debug it? And maybe if this is a very common error that a lot of people face, just give me a 20 question style error tree or resolution tree to figure out what my thing is.
Yeah. It feels Herculean. It could be done, but I don't know. I don't know if you have you tried doing that, or how deep have
No,
you gone down that rabbit hole?
I think I can make part way, but also a lot of it has to be done with the opt-in consent or cooperation of all the library maintainers in the world,
Yeah. Oh
which
yeah.
is
Yeah.
is never going to happen.
But for the major ones, because I know Google, for example, has Project Aurora, which is supposed to sort of help other major frameworks, often Next.js, but also Angular and Nuxt, get on the same page about web standards.
Yeah,
If that kind of thing was baked into the web standards, then it could trickle to frameworks and tackle 80%
yeah,
of errors, which is better than zero.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, maybe one last observation for this talk, and then we can kind of let Jonathan get back to it, which
Yeah.
is that errors are APIs, and most of us spend no time thinking about our error design, and that means that when frustrating things happen like this, or or other libraries depend on our errors, they're not documented very well, if at
Yeah.
all. And so when we change them, we like don't even think about our downstream consumers of our errors, and that's why stuff like this, the stuff that he's complaining about, happens. And there's no real way to fix it unless we start taking errors seriously. And so what I call this is, how everyone in developer relations is pursuing this concept of developer experience engineering.
Yep. For sure.
Developer experience is very much the happy path, right? Like, oh, look how few lines of code I have to write to do something interesting. Look how quickly I can get something spun up. That's the happy path. But
Yep.
actually, the real work, or the real unsung heroes, are the people who take care of the unhappy path. So I call this developer exception engineering,
Nice.
where I know,
Yeah. Yeah.
developer
Yeah.
experience, developer exception. Um,
XX. Yeah.
Exactly, DX. It's the other kind of DX
The other
where
guy,
you
DX.
guard people from all the WTFs, and when they sort of wander off of the path that you anticipated, you guide them back to success. And exactly zero people I know work on this as a job.
Yep. Well, I know one. I know one. Erica, our language tooling person at Astro. She
Really?
only did, yeah, language tooling in VS Code, which is
Uh,
mostly just debugging error hints, and then the
yeah,
new errors overlay, which was codifying our error codes and everything. So
yeah,
she is
yeah.
errors.
This
Princess
is the
error.
stuff that like should get standing applauses from people. It's not
It
the
should.
fancy slick demos. It's the like when you're in trouble, she come and help you. Like that is a real
Yes.
heroes, God's work, really.
Yeah, because we know Astro is like, it's hard to push a new framework onto people in any way. So the best
Yeah.
thing that you can do is make the onboarding experience and like the lifetime experience of trying to do new things as seamless as possible. It's like the whole iPhone perfect packaging when you open it up model. Like the create command
Nice.
better be amazing, and the exceptions better be really, really honestly nice looking and also readable, because you're going to hit an exception in your first hour, like guaranteed, no matter what you're doing. Every
If you guys,
framework I've tried, that is true.
so not to make every conversation an AI conversation, but
I mean,
to make this one an AI
whatever.
conversation, you guys, had some success with Houston. Your doc AI question and answer thing.
Right.
It seems like some interpretation of error codes, or some usage of that inside of your Bootstrap or Create Astro app or whatever you have. Like that seems like might make sense. I don't know if you guys have explored that.
It does make sense. We only posted the Houston bot as really a weekend project that we refined for a launch week, because we have like
Uh huh.
quarterly launch weeks. And
Uh huh.
we spun off into support AI. We have a support AI channel that people check pretty frequently. It's a nice sort of two-step of, if you don't get a response fast enough in support, go to support AI and you get something that's like 80% the quality, I would say, but it still gets you somewhere. So that's the furthest we've gone, but it feels like it could go deeper. We were trying something with like Houston integrated in the editor, because we have a VS Code theme right now that has a Houston avatar that floats around, but there's no chatbot. There's nothing to actually teach you about Astro or tell you anything. So co-locating in the editor is something that we've tried, but we didn't find anything that was like integrated enough. It would take a lot of resources. So
Yeah.
the answer is no. But if you have ideas, I I can push
Well,
them.
my idea is small developer. It's just the thing I launched
Yeah,
last week
it
that
literally
has kind
that.
of
Yeah,
killed up a
that
little
makes sense.
bit. Cool. Well, at some point, I would like to replace all the starter apps with small developers. So that's a little bit of my stated goal right now.
It would be so nice. I know we're going so deep on this, but we
It's okay.
designing
Honestly.
the perfect prompts for a create command, it was a nightmare trying to figure out what options to choose and how to word it in a way that's not too long, but still clear on what it's trying to do. We had a problem where we wanted a basics template that has a set of styles and a minimal template that doesn't have those styles. And no one
Okay.
could ever tell the difference between, oh, let's call it basics and minimal. Do I want basics? I don't know. And then how about just the basics, an empty project? People are like, do I want an empty project, or are the basics too big? It's like, if you could just describe, I want an Astro app with an example of styles, and just type that in, then it could create something that has that style sheet. And if you don't type with styles or anything like that, it just spins up the empty project. However you want to communicate it, it would do it instead of having to go through a prompt tree, which it's different for everyone. It's so tough to do a prompt tree. And I've seen it done wrong
Interesting.
so many times. Yeah.
Oh, I should.
There's something there.
Okay. There's something there. Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's ask Jonathan. See what he
let's
thinks.
let's I don't know if you'd be thrilled about AI in general. All right. Okay, switching audio.
About some graphics stuff, making decisions about what to do, and I copy a line of a previous email and paste it into the reply box. And then I start typing my reply, and it goes into like a 3-character wide column over here, because somehow they've managed to reproduce all the kinds of stupid Microsoft Word formatting bugs that everyone was frustrated with in the 90s and 2000s. Now those are in Gmail, and I don't know how to fix it. Like, you fight with it for a while to get it to stop happening. You have to like delete something invisible. I don't know. Very annoying. So then I say, okay, I'm going to get some real programming done. I go to Visual Studio, and I say, I'm going to type in my command line arguments up there. And as soon as I do that, we get this box that says, hey, collection was modified. Enumeration option may not, or operation may not execute. Why? I don't exactly know why that's a problem. Like, I'm just telling it a string. We're not even trying to do anything with the string. It's just like, save this for later for when we want to run the program. But apparently that's too hard, right? And this is far from the only problem with Visual Studio. Visual Studio has many, many bugs. But this is the funniest one because it's so simple what I'm trying to do, and it can't do it all the time. I don't know what percentage of the time this happens. It's probably like 5%. I don't know, 4%. So then I decided to blow off some steam and play some games. So let me download a game on the Epic Store, but we're unable to start the download for some reason. So maybe I'll go to Steam because that's a more reliable, longer-lasting store. And I'm able to actually download a game, but then when I go to the install window, it's just like a black window, and I have to restart Steam to play the game. Then I manage to play the game, and then I alt-tab out for a second to check something, and then now full screen is all messed up, and the game's like up in a corner of a window, right? And then I have to restart the game to get full screen again. And then I'm watching some Counter-Strike. There was a really good match between Cloud9 and Luminosity Gaming about a month ago. And, but for the entire match, there was a mysterious 6th player on the Cloud9 side called Undefined up in the corner there. Let me zoom in on that map for you Counter-Strike fans. It's Undefined is on the left. 100,000 people were watching this match, and it was there the whole time.
Yeah, I just want to say this happened to me too on the,
What?
I think it was the JS, which one? JavaScript developer survey, the big one. But they asked me to do a quote for it.
State of JS. Yeah.
State of JS, that's what it is. Yeah, they asked a few people to put a quote of their favorite library, and I said, Zod is my favorite library for validating your runtime JavaScript. And my bio was null on the quote. And people thought it was a joke because I'm talking about a validator and my bio's null, but they actually didn't validate it, and they missed my bio. It's the same problems. They are everywhere. I expected object, but I mean, yeah. Anyways, continue.
I was thinking about a game I like called Ultima 4, so I went to this website that had the map, and the map was like screwed up because it was like wrapping into extra lines, so I opened a different browser to see it correctly. I needed to get a visa to come to the Russian Federation, so I go to the visa site, and I start typing my information, and maybe I typoed my phone number, or I put the +1, and it didn't like it or something. So it says phone number is invalid over here, but I couldn't fix the phone number. No matter what I put in, it wouldn't accept it, because whatever the variable was for phone number is invalid would never get reset. So I had to like stop the application, close the website, like clear my cookies, go back, and reapply in order to be able to, and be very careful when I was typing my phone number. There's just so many of these.
So
all of this was within a couple
software,
days. Like, I didn't have to try hard to find these. Right?
Yeah, like that is inexcusable. Government software is something I do feel strongly about. It's not glamorous work, but it is work used by the most everybody, by the most vulnerable and the most powerful. All of us alike. We have to use nonsensical government forms that are not very good. And I wish that maybe we had more money in there, but I don't think money is quite the issue as well. I do think that it's just not seen as a good thing or a glamorous thing to serve the general population with government services. You always want to work in like a hot tech startup or like a big FANG company. Nobody thinks of government as like a fun employer. But I mean, the impact is real. Have you come across Eric Meyer? He's like an old CSS OG. He had this blog post about designing for emergency. You ever see that one?
I haven't seen that blog post, no.
um, I don't know if that's the exact title, but it has the words "designing for emergency" in there. And basically, what happened was his daughter, very tragic, got very some critical illness, had to be rushed to the hospital, and he had to in the car or in the cab look up the address of the hospital or look up like where to go and like what to do, like where the ER was and what the opening hours were. um, and there was it was not responsive. and and then like when he's like kind of scrolled in and tried to view stuff, like he couldn't tap into the place that he needed to find the most important feature of the hospital, which is his address.
Yeah.
um, and and this was a potentially life or death situation for his daughter. And he was just very frustrated at all of it, right? It's just and that was a private hospital, maybe, I don't know, or a government hospital. But like people think about, when us as web developers or programmers, we design these services for users, we mostly think about like what our PM wants, what the boss or like the CEO wants. But really, hey, it's about the user. And we have to make sure that we design for emergency, like to make sure that
Yeah.
you know um, that all users are taken care of, and the most important things that they want is taken care of. One of the things that also comes to mind when Jonathan was talking about his forums was, assuming things about names, right? Like there's another very famous collection about falsehoods programmers believe about names. And mine is a very lightweight case of this.
Yeah.
I try to go by Swix these days, and therefore I don't have a last name. But so many forums require a last name. But
Yeah.
actually, there are a lot of people who only have one name, and maybe just because they don't know their parents. They just
Wow,
have a.
really? I never thought of that. Because I've seen the
So
jokes of, oh, this input requires at least two characters, and they have a
yeah,
last name
they
with
have a
two
single character
characters, and
name. Yeah.
yeah, or a single character. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of weird, like So anyway, we have a responsibility. We should not take our jobs lightly. Like we do have a responsibility to our end users.
Yeah, I totally feel that. And it's funny framing like government and medical stuff in software is in decline, because I don't think there was ever a software renaissance for government. I think that has just been
There is a little
long
bit.
standing. Oh, there
So do you know
is.
about 13D or 13F? This is like the U.S. government service. Obama started
Okay.
this. There's like this like elite
Oh,
government unit that Obama CTO, like
because I've seen
we
a
have a chief
disaster
technology
scheme.
officer of the
Yeah.
United States now, right? Who's like, hey, we don't have our technology shit together.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so he appointed Megan Smith as the first CTO of America. Maybe not, and maybe looks like third CTO of America. There are two others before him, before her.
Gotcha.
And yeah, like they tried, they recruited from Silicon Valley, and they tried to improve things. The U.S. Digital Service, I think, is part of that effort. I'm not sure the
Mm.
relationship between that and like the 13F or 13D effort. The UK government had a big redesign of UK.gov, and Netlify, one of our I think our head designer Francis used to be the lead designer for UK.gov.
Mm.
And basically, her decisions were just compulsory for all of UK citizens, right? Like, so it's a pretty weighty responsibility there. So I come from Singapore, and so Singapore obviously also takes technology pretty seriously. So what we did was we took one of our smartest guys and put him in charge of forms. Literally, he runs forms.sg, and so all government forms go through him because everyone else doesn't know how to do
Ah.
forms right.
Ah. Yes. Yes. Is it like an embed, or is he like a contractor for that?
It's like a white labelable thing.
Yeah.
So every government
Okay, okay.
agency just uses forms.sg to like make their forms so that like people
Perfect.
don't screw up their forms.
Ah. Oh, that's so good. Because yeah, there's no form library in existence that's going to solve this. We just need a service or
Yeah,
AI, whatever you want
yeah.
to dump on it.
Yeah,
Because
and so you
yeah,
think about like government problems, right? Like, oh, okay, I need the like national ID of like every citizen, and I need to validate it, and it's got
yep.
to be like set to these. So like, okay, let's just standardize all these things, right? Because leaving it to each agency alone, it's not cutting it. They all suck.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, they mostly do. Okay, let's finish this out. He's got a few more examples, of course.
Right? I just had to stop collecting them. But then I come here, and as if to give me more examples in this talk. So here in this hotel, where I've been writing this talk for a couple days, they have this software-controlled heating and lighting system where it's like you kind of push the non-button buttons and things happen. And some percentage of the time, not all the time,
Non-button buttons.
when I turn the air conditioning on or off,
Touch
the
buttons.
phone rings. It's not a full ring even. It's just like a little boop, 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 and then it stops. But I know it's not intentional because it doesn't happen every time. And I am not making this up. This actually happens in my room right now. Okay? And then, for this talk, 2 hours ago, I was working at the last minute to make a diagram, and I downloaded fully legitimate licensed Creative Cloud Photoshop to my machine. The first thing I do is go File, New Document, bam. The new document extension could not be loaded because of a program error, right? And so my whole point, though,
What
is we
error?
are not surprised by any of this. My other point is that it's getting worse over time. So try this every day yourself, because we've gotten used to it. I didn't even think it would be as much, when I had the idea to record this, I didn't think it would be as much as it was. Try counting for yourself just every day. Just make a little list of all these things, and I think you'll be surprised how many there are.
Yeah. And he goes on to talk about, he gets into, some of it is programming purism of people don't know how to build game engines, for example, so they lean on the shoulders of giants, and sometimes shoulders of giants aren't worth leaning on, and it's worth knowing how the internals work in order to debug and write better error messages. That also speaks to because there are so many packages these days, and trying to corral all of the error states and exceptions those packages can throw, you just end up with weird edge cases, like a phone ringing when you, I don't know how that's possible, actually. I don't know how a phone rings when you set a thermostat, but that's the most extreme answer of like knocking over a stool in one bar and it falls over in another bar. I think that's the analogy.
Yeah.
It happens.
Awesome. Well, that was a great clip, man.